Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So, first of all, welcome to the Ocu Healthscape session. It doesn't feel like a month has gone by. It's wonderful to have the audience back with us on this session, which is the special reflections of what has happened in the occupational health space. So, I see that as people are joining in, but being completely respectful of the time of the speakers. It's great to actually have the audience today. I would like to welcome the audience and begin with the introduction of the speakers. So I think just like always, another exciting session of Ocu Healthscapes coming across. And today we are having two eminent speakers with us. Our beloved Dr. Rajiv Jain, who needs no introduction about himself. So as everyone has seen, heard him, he's a publicly eminent speaker. He is well regarded, well acclaimed expert on several topics. Today, Dr. Rajiv Jain is with us. Just to also give a brief introduction, Dr. Rajiv is the Vice President of AUHT Delhi. He has been the Senior Consultant Health at Indian Railways, has more than 40 years of experience in hospital and health administration. He's been awarded as a fellow of several associations, IPHA, IOH, AUHT, and many more. He has also been involved in the publication of more than 145 scientific papers in national and international conferences, journals, books. He has been associated either through scholarships or as fellowships with the WHO, Canadian Society of International Health, the International Clinical Epidemiology Network, and also the International Society for Priorities in Healthcare. So thanks for being with us, Dr. Rajiv. It's going to be an excellent session today. I can assure you on that. Today, we also have with us Dr. Vishwaraj Mashelkar. Dr. Vishwaraj Mashelkar is the Honorary Secretary of AOH Goa. He's currently the Senior Manager Medical and the SHE Department at Goa Shipyard Limited. Dr. Mashelkar has been awarded as, he was awarded the Young Researcher Travel Award at the 93rd meeting of the Japan Society of Occupational Health Conference in 2020. After doing his MBBS from Goa, he did his Master's in Hospital Administration from ICFA University, Tripura. He is an AFIH and he has also done a certificate program in health, safety and environment from Public Health Foundation in India. So without taking too much of time, I would now like to invite Dr. Rajiv to take us forward on this academic fiesta. All of us waiting for this for the whole month, and now the time has come. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Rajiv for the further deliberations.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish, for the kind words that you've spoken about me and Dr. Mashelkar, as well as Ocu Healthscapes. The entire process, I think it is a collective process where we take a look at what has happened in the field of environmental and occupational health during the last 1 month. And a lot happens in a period of 30-31 days or so in this field, which is fast evolving and gaining all the more importance post-COVID or post-lockdown period. The whole world is changing, and we have to witness and document and archive the process and the events that happen in the region, in the local area, in the country, or the region, or the world. And this process is an ongoing process. So today, when we start this Ocu Healthscapes 21st episode, the issues that we are going to discuss in today's episode will be optimizing brain health across the life course, National Labour Conference 2022, a research showing that clean air cuts anemia risk. Another research work which has been shown during the last 1 month is almost half of global cancer deaths are due to risk factors, with smoking, alcohol use, and high BMI having the greatest contributors. Besides that, Dr. Mashelkar will be talking about a research study published recently about the link between constipation and shift work. And forthcoming conferences, seminars, webinars of importance shall also be discussed and shared with you. But before everything else, we take a look at a unique outbreak which occurred in the recent past globally. And one has to be aware, all occupational health professionals have to be aware of the important outbreaks that occurred at the global level. So we will take a look at this outbreak of hepatitis in children, which has happened recently. And we take a short, we share with you a short video where the questions, important questions are answered. So let's have a look at this video before proceeding further.
Hello and welcome to Science in 5. I'm Vismita Gupta-Smith. We are talking about a hepatitis outbreak in 35 countries, which is largely impacting children under 5. Here to discuss the possible causes and the signs that parents, caregivers, and countries should be looking for is Dr. Philippa Easterbrook. Welcome, Philippa. Let's get started, Philippa, with a situation update. Where are we right now in this outbreak?
Well, the first cases of severe acute hepatitis, that means inflammation of the liver, in previously healthy young children were reported from Scotland in early April this year. And from that time, over the last 4 months, more than 1,000 cases have been reported from 35 countries worldwide. The majority of these cases are in young children, aged less than 5 years, and most present with the typical symptoms of acute gastroenteritis, so abdominal pain, nausea and vomiting, but then with rapid progression to jaundice, indicating liver damage. That's shown by pale stools, dark urine, and yellowing of the skin or the eyes. A distinctive feature of this event has been the rapid progression and the severity of the liver disease in previously healthy children. Around a third have required intensive care support. 48, that's around 5%, needed an urgent liver transplant for acute liver failure, and that's a life-changing event. And 18, around 2.5%, died. But overall, although this is a very serious event, the cases remain rare.
Philippa, what do we know about the causes of this outbreak so far?
Well, what was unusual about this event is that we didn't know the underlying cause. So one of the first priorities for WHO was to work with countries and partners to establish a cause. And early on, some of these underlying causes were excluded through investigations of the affected children. First, that none of the children were infected with the viruses that commonly cause hepatitis, so hepatitis A, hepatitis B, C, or E. Secondly, that there was no evidence for a common exposure to foods or water or to medications or other household members. And thirdly, and importantly, there was no evidence for a link to COVID vaccination, since almost none of the affected children had been vaccinated. But there was an early clue that a common virus called adenovirus may have a role, either acting alone or as a co-infection with another virus, such as COVID, either past or current COVID infection. So we now have a much better picture and understanding. Around a half to 3/4 of all the affected children, in those who had blood samples available and that were tested, were positive for adenovirus.
Philippa, do we know why a common virus like adenovirus caused such severe disease? And what are the signs that parents, caregivers, and countries should be looking for?
We don't know for certain, but there are two likely explanations. First, that the young children had become more susceptible and sensitive to adenovirus. And this might be because over the 2 years that there had been public health measures for COVID in place, such as mask wearing or closures of schools, there had been much less exposure among these children to many infections, including adenovirus. And that when these measures were lifted, that's in early this year, that there was then an increase of the circulation and transmission of these infections. A second possible explanation is a role for previous COVID infection. And we know that this was very common in the children. Around 70% had evidence of past COVID infection. And it could be that in some of these children who were then exposed to adenovirus, they had a hyperreactive immune response that led to liver inflammation and the hepatitis. But it was also noted that only 10% of the affected children had current active COVID infection. So we don't think that active COVID infection plays a part or is a cause. But there is reassuring news going forward in that the number of cases have declined and these cases remain rare and the majority of children recover. But it's important that countries remain alert to the possibility of further cases and that they have in place referral pathways and facilities to provide appropriate care. And for parents to remain aware that if their child were to develop symptoms of gastroenteritis which were to worsen or to develop jaundice, they would seek medical care promptly.
Thank you, Philippa. That was Science in 5 today. Until next time then, stay safe.
So friends, now you know how complex the disease process and unraveling the causes of the disease unique processes is, whether it is at the local level or at the global level. At the same time, we need to be aware that new outbreaks will keep occurring, and we need to be aware that we need to keep our guards on. For that, one needs to do total reading of the latest research that goes on, whether at the global level or at the regional or national level. And as you know, in each episode of Occhio Healthscapes, we have a practice of sharing important published articles about occupational and environmental health. From this episodes onwards, we will have number of people who would be interested in sharing an important research publication, whether published in the globally known journals or any local or national journal as well. So this time we have Dr. Vishraj Mashelkar, who shall be sharing an important study which has been published recently relating to shift work and constipation. So I will request Dr. Vishraj Mashelkar to share the study.
A very good evening to all. Thank you, Dr. Rajiv Jain. So am I audible and visible? Thank you. So today, on this episode of Journal Scan, we have an interesting article from the journal Safety and Health at Work. This is the Elsevier publication. It's a volume 13, issue 2, published in the month of June 2022, from the page number 240 to 247. This is an original article with the title Association Between Insomnia and Constipation, a multi-center 3-year cross-sectional study using shift workers' health checkup data. The authors are Byung-Yoon Yan, Juho Sim, Jin Ha Yoon, Sung Kyun Kim. The purpose of taking this article is because this study is the first of its kind to report the relationship between sleep disturbance and constipation among people who are working in shifts. The findings suggest clinicians involved in prescribing medications for sleep to consider constipation as a comorbidity status. Furthermore, the role of gastroenterology dysfunction, including constipation, should be highlighted when considering the management and control of sleep quality. Finally, this study has laid down the foundation for future prospective cohort studies that are needed to better understand the causal relationships between insomnia and constipation. As we all know, insomnia is one of the most common health problems worldwide, and it is linked to various diseases. The American Insomnia Survey established that the prevalence of insomnia is around 22.1%. There are 4 cardinal nighttime symptoms which are commonly associated with insomnia. They are difficulty in initiating sleep, difficulty in maintaining the sleep, early sleep awakening, and non-restorative sleep. These were proved to be related to several mental and physical conditions, including high blood pressure, arthritis, headaches, depression, and digestive symptoms. So there is a considerable relationship between shift work and sleep dysfunction due to irregular circadian rhythm. In general, when workers work outside a typical 9 to 5 workday, it is called as a shift work. This usually includes assignments outside the traditional daytime hours, including fixed early morning or evening and night work. There have also been many studies which illustrated a correlation between sleep dysfunction and gastrointestinal disorders. Even though it is evident that sleep work and insomnia are related to gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD or IBS, there is a lack of studies focusing on constipation, which is an important factor which affects the quality of life. The prevalence in functional constipation is almost 7.8%, which is approximately 5 times larger than the opioid instituted constipation. Despite this prevalence, constipation is often overlooked because it is not considered to suggest that constipation is an associated disease and even death. The American Gastroenterology Association's technical review on constipation identified the following risk factors. First, and finally, medication, depression, stressful life events, among others. Although insomnia constipation highly prevalent, studies are still lacking. The study examined between insomnia and constipation of workers who have high prevalence than any other study. The material methods, common data models of Korean workers' health examination among the hospitals in Korea were conducted among 2 hospitals. It is a tool of facilitate standardization and sharing between heterogeneous local database systems. The common data models harmonizes the multiple disparate databases into 4 domains, that is the general measurements, common questionnaires, spatial questionnaires, and night questionnaires. In the current study, they included participants from 2 age groups and hospitals following the criteria of age more than 30 years and shift workers who answered spatial night questions in 2015, 2016, and 17. The age criteria in this particular study was established regarding the previous studies. Special night questions in checkup are performed when the workers take up night work was as follows. Examiners who did not answer insomnia and constipation questionnaires, people who were engaged in shift work for less than 5 years, age who were below 30 years, and examinees who had missing essential data. So a total of 17,529 participants were finally enrolled in the study after excluding workers who had missing data variables, including insomnia severity, presence of constipation symptoms, BMI, excessive smoking history, working hours, working year, or shift type. The study protocol was in accordance with the ethical guidelines of the 1975 Declaration of Helsinki and was approved by the Institutional Review Board of Severance Hospital. The need for obtaining informed consent from the participant was waived due to the retrospective nature of the study. Coming to the evaluation of the data, the primary outcome of the study was the presence of a constipation symptom. Participants were asked to indicate any symptoms they had during the last 6 months, with subcategories of gastrointestinal problems, including constipation. The response options were severe, mild, and none. The presence of constipation was defined with the answer was mild or severe to be constipation subcategory in the special subquestion. Insomnia was measured, including the Insomnia Severity Index questionnaire, which has been broadly used as a reliable scale of insomnia. Each question is related according to the 5-point Likert scale. Total score ranging from 0 to 28. Based on the score, the participants 0 to 4 participant 0 to 4 absence insomnia. 0 to 28 covariates used for adjust co-founders were body mass index, exercise, smoking history, and work profiles. The data of these covariates were obtained from health checkups, questionnaires. The exercise people who were working, who did exercise of high or medium, more considered group. The smoking history was stratified into 3 groups: non-smoker and smokers, included in the 3-shift group. The traditional form of 3-shift work in an 8-hour shift schedule was starting at 7 a.m. the day shift, 3 p.m. the evening shift, and 11 p.m. the night shift. Long working were decided based on the number of weeks were considered as long working hours. Working interval was defined as the interval between the end of the previous shift and the beginning of the next shift. Short working interval was defined when a worker returned to work within 11 hours and the end of their shift work. Coming to the statistical analysis, the difference between the examinees with and without constipation was compared using the independent t-test and chi-square test for continuous data and categorical data respectively. Odds ratio with 95% confidence interval of constipation were calculated using the multiple logistic regression model. The various factors such as lifestyle and related conditions were included in multivariate logistic regressions. Each medical institution analyzed its own data with the same statistical method. Pooled ORs and 95% of confidence intervals of constipations were calculated using the weight obtained through the standard error. The fixed model effect was then used, and the p-value in heterogeneity was below 0.05. It was considered based on the statistical test, the two-sided and a p-value of less than 0.05 was considered statistically significant. All statistical analysis were performed using R version 4.0.2. Coming to the results and the discussions. This is the table which summarizes the characteristic of shift workers with and without a constipation syndrome. The mean age of the total population was 44.3. The proportion of males was 56.9%. Factors such as female sex, smoking history, and being underweight and a non-smoker were strongly associated with an increased risk of constipation. In terms of working profile, working year, working hour, and working intervals were all associated with the presence of constipation symptoms. Most shift workers were in the 3-shift groups. The table 2 summarizes the characteristics of shift workers according to insomnia. The mean age of insomnia group was older compared to other insomnia groups. Workers working more than 52 hours or more in 3 shifts and short working intervals had a significant higher prevalence of insomnia. This is the figure 1.a, which shows the prevalence of constipation stratified by sex and age. Males have a similar prevalence of constipation regardless of age, and the prevalence of constipation tends to increase in female as the age decreases. Figure 1.9b shows the association between the insomnia and the constipation stratified by sex. It shows that females have a higher prevalence of constipation than males. And constipation and insomnia are positively correlated to each other. Table 3 shows the pooled odds ratio and 95% confidence intervals for the constipation symptoms in workers, stratified by ISI scores using multivariate logistic regression models. This table again shows the pooled ORs and 95% confidence intervals for constipation with insomnia stratified by sex, which was earlier shown in the figures. Coming to the discussion, the current study studied a population of almost 17,529 shift workers. It showed that insomnia had considerably associated with constipation. Further, adjustments with working hours, working intervals, working year, shift type, and baseline characteristics such as age, sex, diabetes history, BMI, exercise, and smoking history did not attenuate to the relationship. Moreover, there was a dose-response relationship implying that with increasing severity of insomnia, the odds of constipation symptoms increased. Several studies before this have demonstrated that shift workers tend to report insomnia and their mental health problems such as depression more than other workers. Therefore, shift workers may be prone to increased risk of medical conditions. Sleep disorders are associated with functional gastrointestinal disorders, and patients with such disorders frequently experience dyspepsia, IBS, and constipation. Furthermore, many studies have focused on drug-induced or disease-related constipation. Addressing chronic functional constipation is also crucial for improving the quality of life and reducing the risk of constipation-related comorbidities such as type 2 diabetes mellitus, IBS, and GERD. This result emphasizes the importance of controlling and preventing constipation to avoid the risk of constipation-related diseases. Our study suggests that the insomnia could be one of the risk factors for constipation, finding that was previously unknown. This finding could be the basis for an in-depth approach to prevent constipation in shift workers. Based on the stratified analysis and logistic regression models, it was found that females were at higher odds of experiencing constipation than males. This could be due to several reasons, including hormonal factors and damage to the pelvic muscles, nerves associated with childbirth and gynecological surgeries. This study proved a strong relationship between insomnia, constipation symptoms, even after performing subgroup analysis, which strengthens the validity of the results. Pooled odds ratio in males presented a higher odds ratio than in the females, which indicated that male shift workers with insomnia should be considered as a high-risk group and be managed well. In terms of age, the study showed reverse association of constipation with age. Current smoking was highly correlated to constipation in both centers, which supported the hypothesis that smoking is associated with constipation. Interestingly, workers who did not exercise also showed a positive correlation with the presence of constipation in this study. Several studies demonstrated that physical activity is associated with decreased prevalence of constipation and improvement in the defecation pattern and constipation-related quality of life. The study has several strengths. First, the number of examinees, including in the study, is large. Pooled odds ratio also adds strength to the relationship between insomnia and constipation. Moreover, this finding differs from the previous studies in that the group included in the study is a special group, that is the night shift workers of young age. Lastly, it is because of sleep disorders have not been studied much as a correlation to functional constipation. This study may support the need for significant research between these two variables in the future. The study, however, had several limitations. First, because the study was a cross-sectional study, the correlation between constipation and sleep can be seen, but the causal relationship cannot be proved. Therefore, further studies are needed to analyze the causal relations through cohort analysis. Second, reliable diagnostic criteria such as the Rome criteria were not used for the outcome of this study. However, constipation is a symptom of a disease, and the questionnaire containing the patient's experience was considered as a patient report's outcome. Third, although most variables that show differences between the groups or may affect the different variables were used for analysis as covariates. Other variables such as alcohol intake, sleep disorder history that were unknown are not measured properly may have acted as confounding factors. However, this study enrolled a sufficient number of participants to dilute possible errors related to past history of lifestyle. Finally, the data did not include self-reports of the use of medications such as opioids or comorbidities that constitutes constipation. In conclusion, it was observed that a strong correlation between sleep disturbance and constipation symptoms among people working in shifts. Regarding the study, health education, including sleep hygiene, increase in water and fiber intake, and regular physical exercise can be implemented in workplaces. In addition, primary care physicians can take advantage of the fact that occupational factors and sleep disturbances may be related to constipation. In conclusion, it could be an opportunity to propose policies or prepare guidelines to improve the quality of life, especially for shift workers, through the management of sleep quality and proper bowel habit movements.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwaraj, for sharing this important study. No doubt, we generally believe that insomnia and constipation are correlated among shift workers, but there was no evidence. Now, in this study, there is definitely some evidence available, and the strength of the study definitely is that such a large number of respondents were studied and confounding factors were controlled. The study definitely requires further validation amongst different geographical regions. And with increasing shift work in our part of the country, as well as in the IT services group, and in many industries where round-the-clock work is a necessity, this aspect needs to be looked into, and people need to institute intervention measures to control this constipation, which is an important disabling condition for individuals, which shows in terms of decreased productivity. So if anybody would like to raise any question about the study to Dr. Vishwaraj or any of us, we would like to hear. If anybody wants to clarify his doubt about the study, anybody from the audience, they're welcome to raise their question to Dr. Vishwaraj. In the chat box, Dr. Damodar Lele has raised a question: why role of diet and water intake has not been thought of during the study? There is a fashion these days to correlate every problem with sleep apnea or insomnia. So that is one issue which Dr. Damodar Lele has raised in the chat box. How would you react to that?
Yes, sir. Sir, since this was a study which was carried out in almost 9 hospitals in Korea, sir, and they used a particular model called as a common data model of Korean workers' health examination. So based on this model, they had devised the questions and the questionnaire, and since the study population was large, I guess they have restricted to this particular generalized term of water intake and diet's role in this particular study, sir.
Well, Dr. Damodar Lele, what Dr. Vishwaraj has said, in addition, exactly because of this reason that you have mentioned, there is a fashion. When we say fashion, people have some hypothesis, but they have no evidence. So what is the right way to establish the truth or untruth of an hypothesis? The only way is to study, and study scientifically, and establish and control all the causes, that all the possible reasons by which insomnia and constipation could be correlated, and control the confounding factor so that you can know the exact relationship between insomnia and constipation. And that is what the science of epidemiology is all about. You may have certain doubts about this correlation, but you need to establish through a large scientific epidemiological study I think that is the purpose why Dr. Vishwaraj shared the study. Dr. Vishwaraj, Dr. Delia D'Souza has raised another question in the chat box. What was the operational definition of insomnia and constipation in the study? Was it the same definition that was applied at all the centers?
Yes, sir. The definition that was applied was the same at all the centers because, as I had just mentioned, it was a common data model which was used, and this tool is used to facilitate data standardization and sharing between heterogeneous local databases, database systems. So we had a uniform. They had a uniform questionnaire which had basically 4 domains to it. The first one was general measurement. Then was the second was the common questionnaire. Then was the spatial questionnaire, and finally was the night questionnaire. So the same applies. The same applies to this also, sir. It was definitely taken on the same footing for all, sir. So that we had a common, so that they had a common controlled group with the same output, sir.
Very true. Very true. Thank you, Dr. Vishwaraj, for sharing this paper. It is important, and the journal is also important, and it is available free access, and one could go and see the article in more detail. Also see what other issues have been published, what other articles have been published in the issue that you mentioned. It was a June 2022 issue.
June 2022 issue of safety and health at work, sir. It was the volume 13, issue number 2, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Dr. Rajesh Kumar Jain and also Enoch for giving me an opportunity to present the paper. Thank you so much, sir.
Always welcome. Always welcome. So we go on with the OcuHealthscapes, and then at this stage we will take a look at an important document which has been shared globally, and that document is important for all the people who are practicing occupational health in India or anywhere in the world. And that is, could we have the next slide, please? Yes, this is the document, WHO position paper on optimizing brain health across life. Brain health across life. How do we optimize brain health? Brain health is an evolving concept, attracting increasing attention not only from the health sector, but also from wider society, stimulating rich debate, and for good reasons. The brain and central nervous system are the command center of the human body, controlling both conscious and unconscious body functions, and thereby influencing every aspect of life. If our brains are challenged by disease or other factors, this poses significant risks not only to an individual's overall health and well-being, but also to global development and productivity. It is estimated that 1 in 3 people will develop a neurological disorder at some point in their life, making neurological disorders the leading cause of disability and the second leading cause of death. Additionally, 43% of children under the age of 5 in low and middle income countries are believed to miss their developmental potential due to extreme poverty and growth stunting, leading to financial losses and projected 26% lower annual earnings in adulthood. Next slide, please. The new WHO position paper, which has been launched on 9th of August 2022, presents a framework for understanding brain health and the importance of brain health optimization for all brain health. Brain health can be defined as a state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, socio-emotional, behavioral, and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over their life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. Many determinants are known to impact brain health, and continuous interactions between these determinants plus an individual's context lead to lifelong adaptation of brain structure and function. The position paper provides insight into the following clusters of determinants: physical health, healthy environments, safety and security, learning and social connection, and access to quality services. Optimizing brain health by addressing these determinants leads to multiple benefits, including lower rates of many chronic health conditions, neurological, mental, substance use, and physical, as well as improved quality of life and multiple social and economic benefits, all of which contribute to greater well-being and help advance society. The position paper demonstrates the relevance of optimizing brain health within the broader context of public health and society, and offers practical policy solutions and future directions for the field, including specific actions for addressing brain health determinants, ongoing priorities in brain health research, and operationalizing and measuring brain health. Next slide, please. This is the cover of this position paper, Optimizing Brain Health Across the Life Course, published by World Health Organization. So we have the next slide, please. Yes. What is brain health and what does optimizing brain health mean? Brain health can be defined as a state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, socio-emotional, behavioral, and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over the life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. Continuous interactions between different determinants and a person's individual context lead to lifelong adaptation of brain structure and functioning. Optimizing brain health improves mental and physical health and also creates positive social and economic impacts, all of which contribute to greater well-being and help advance society. Next slide, please. What are the brain health determinants? Let's have a look at each of them. First is the physical health. A person's physical health and their health behaviors can impact their brain health in innumerable ways across the life course. This is because there are multi-directional interactions between the brain and the body. Important aspects of physical health that influence the brain include maternal health and the intrauterine environment, genetic and epigenetic factors, nutrition, infections, non-communicable diseases, and sensory impairments, health behaviors including good quality sleep, physical activity, and substance use, and traumatic injuries. Second is healthy environments. Healthy environments can also have a profound impact on brain health, especially during developmentally sensitive stages, such as early childhood, adolescence, and older age. There has been increasing information in recent years on environmental factors that affect brain health, including pollutants found in the air, water, and food. Neurotoxic chemicals include heavy metals and inorganic compounds, pesticides, organic solvents, and other organic compounds. In addition, natural disasters, for example, volcanic eruptions, man-made disaster, for example, nuclear explosions or chemical spills, climate change contributing to ambient air pollution, and increased risk of wildfires threaten the brain health of individuals and society as a whole. Third one is the safety and security. Physical safety and financial security can also impact brain health over the life course in multiple ways. Physical safety is the absence of actual physical harm, including abuse, maltreatment, and neglect, and the threat of physical harm. It requires stable and safe housing and safety within the home and broader community. Financial security is not merely the absence of poverty, but also the absence of strain or stress due to financial concerns. It means that one can reasonably afford the necessities of life, including food, housing, health, care, education, and transport. Both physical safety and financial security can have impacts on individuals and their families, as well as the communities in which people live. The fourth determinant of brain health is learning and social connection. Access to opportunities for learning and social connection are important determinants for brain health across the life course and overlap in multiple ways. Learning in early life, for instance, is closely connected with responsive and nurturing caregiving. Similarly, formal learning relies on schools and other educational institutions. while cognitive stimulation in adulthood is often linked to employment and social networks within communities. Additionally, interventions aimed at optimizing brain health, especially in early life, may involve support for both learning and social connection. The fifth determinant is access to quality services. Managing many risk factors of brain health will require access to quality health and social services. Despite best efforts to minimize risk factors, many people still develop conditions that affect the CNS at some point in their lifetime. Therefore, access to quality services represents an important determinant of brain health, and similarly, strengthening health and social care systems so that they provide equitable access to diagnosis, treatment, care, and rehabilitation as and when needed, and is crucial for optimizing brain health for all. Carola Deurwaarder from Netherlands said, when I attend meetings, I make sure to start well rested. So my clients and colleagues mostly see the old me. But if a meeting runs over or is too busy, my energy level drops to zero and my overstimulation starts to show. Inside my brain works the same, but my way slower, and I just can't get the words out of my mouth. So nowadays, we all joke because Carola is attending, we all have to work more effectively and on time. It feels good to laugh about it, and it really helps me to still do the work I love. This is the way to look at life, and brain health requires a kind of relaxed attitude. Neurological illnesses are pervasive, affecting those afflicted not only physically, but often mentally, emotionally, and socially. You must be an active participant in optimizing your brain health. Self-care, which includes exercise, nutrition, sleep, and stress reduction, are all beneficial. Brain health is not only a crucial outcome in and of itself, but also an important mediator for other health and societal outcomes. 43% of children under the age of 5 in low and middle income countries like India were at risk if not reaching their developmental potential due to extreme poverty and stunting. 1 in 3 people globally will develop neurological disorder at some point in their lifetime. Worldwide, only 15 countries report having 3 essential family-friendly national policies that provide caregivers with the resources and time needed for their child's development. 2 years of tuition-free pre-primary school education, 6 months of paid breastfeeding breaks, and 6 months of paid maternity leave and 1 month of paid paternity leave. Only 15 countries. Only 15 countries in the world. Next slide, please. 85 million children under the age of 5 globally were not protected by any of these essential policies. Nearly 250 million children in low and middle income countries risk not reaching their developmental potential due to extreme poverty and stunting. Missed developmental potential due to poverty and stunting is projected to cause 26% lower annual earnings in adulthood. Growing environmental threats to brain health like air pollution, heavy metals, certain pesticides, industrial solvents, and other toxic chemicals. Over 200 chemicals are known to be neurotoxic. Over 200 million people are exposed to arsenic in their groundwater. 99% of the world breathes polluted air. Global burden associated with brain health, neurological disorders are the #1 cause of disability-adjusted life years, with the biggest contributors being stroke, migraine, dementia, meningitis, and epilepsy. Neurological disorders are the second leading cause of death. Over 70% of people with neurological disorders reside in low and middle income countries like India. Yet, access to services is grossly insufficient. Only 1 in 10 people living with dementia in low income countries receive a diagnosis. Only 1 in 4 people with epilepsy receive treatment. Only one low-income country had warfarin available for stroke prevention compared with 73% of high-income countries. Stroke units are operational in more than 90% of high-income countries compared with only 18% of low and middle-income countries. Distribution of neurological workforce is grossly uneven. There is 7.1 neurological workforce per 100,000 population in high-income countries versus 0.1 upon 100,000 in low-income countries. If you look at the overview of intersectoral global action plan on epilepsy and other neurological disorders 2022-2031, we will actually know how we should be going ahead in tackling the deficiency that we have in access to brain health intervention. The goal of the action plan is to reduce the stigma, impact, and burden of neurological disorders, including associated mortality, morbidity, and disability, and to improve the quality of life of people with neurological disorders, their carers, and families. The two parts are, the first part is the strategic objectives of the action plan, and the second part is the action plan, which relies on the following guiding principles. But first, we look at the strategic objectives of the action plan. First, raise the prioritization and strengthen governance. Second, provide effective, timely, and responsive diagnosis, treatment, and care. Third, implement strategies for promotion and prevention. Fourth, foster research and innovation and strengthen information systems. And fifth, strengthen the public health approach to epilepsy. On the other hand, the action plan relies on the following guiding principles. First is people-centered primary health care and universal health coverage. Second, an integrated approach to care across the life course. Third, evidence-informed policy and practice. Fourth, intersectoral action. Fifth, empowerment and involvement of persons with neurological disorders and their carers. And sixth, gender equity and human rights. Brain health allows health workers and society as a whole to consider concepts such as educational status, financial situation, or social security as fundamental components of neurodevelopment and the general well-being of individuals. Number of studies referencing brain health each year have been increasing, and they need to increase. Brain health, as we said earlier, is the state of brain functioning across cognitive, sensory, social, emotional, behavioral, and motor domains, allowing a person to realize their full potential over the life course, irrespective of the presence or absence of disorders. Continuous interactions between different determinants and person's individual context lead to lifelong adaptation of brain structure and functioning. Optimizing brain health improves mental and physical health and also creates positive social and economic impacts, all of which contribute to greater well-being and help advance the society. The stages of brain development across the life course are shown: perinatal period and infancy and early childhood, adolescence, early childhood, midlife, and older age. So in the first phase is, previous slide please, in the first phase the neuroplasticity, second is the pruning, and third one is neuronal loss. If you see how different stages have different connotations. The disorders affecting the central nervous system are quite varied. Common neurological conditions like dementia, epilepsy, headache disorders, motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, and stroke. Injuries like spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, tumors like tumors of the nervous system, neurological complications associated with infections or like cysticercosis, COVID-19, encephalitis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, HIV, malaria, meningitis, rabies, syphilis, tetanus, and Zika virus. Neurodevelopmental disorders like attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorders, cerebral palsy, fetal alcohol syndrome, idiopathic developmental intellectual disability, and cognitive conditions like congenital conditions like congenital birth defects, Down syndrome, neural tube defects, and other genetic defects. What is the WHO definition of mental health and its relationship with brain health? WHO defines mental health as a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Mental health is more than the absence of mental health conditions or disabilities. It is fundamental to our collective and individual ability as humans to think, emote, interact with each other, earn a living, and enjoy life. Brain health, on the other hand, is an important determinant of mental health across the life course. Many of the risk and protective factors that impact mental health, for example, social adversities, air pollution, physical activity, are likely mediated through changes in brain structure and or function. The framework for brain health optimization has been shown in this. Addressing brain health determinants like healthy environments, physical health, safety, security, learning and social connection, and access to quality services. An optimized brain structure and function across the life course, enhance well-being, and improve health and social and economic benefits. This is the framework. Next slide. What are the determinants of brain health across the life course? There is physical health, maternal health, intrauterine environment, genetic, epigenetic factors, nutrition, infections, non-communicable disease, health behaviors, and traumatic injuries. Healthy environments, safe use of chemicals, protection from radiation, healthy and safe workplaces, and agriculture practices. Air and water quality, stable climate, access to preserved nature, and health supportive built environment. Safety and security, in this we have physical safety, financial security, humanitarian crisis, and emergency. In learning and social connection, we have education, lifelong learning, nurturing care, social connection and social isolation, and social networks. In access to quality services, we have integrated care at all health social care levels, skilled workforce and interdisciplinary teams, access to essential medicines, diagnostics and health products, and care support. Mind-body intervention for stress reduction are also an important area in brain health. Growing evidence demonstrates the benefits of a variety of mind-body interventions for brain health and for overall health in the face of chronic stress or adversity. Mindfulness meditation, for example, has been used for decades for stress reduction and has been shown to enhance neuroplasticity in multiple brain regions, including the anterior cingulate, insula, temporoparietal junction, and frontolimbic and default mode networks. These areas of the brain play important roles in attention, emotional regulation, and awareness of the body. Some studies additionally suggest that meditation practices may help preserve brain structure, protect against cognitive decline as we get older, and potentially improve some aspects of cognitive function, such as the executive function and attention. Additionally, the practice of yoga is now thought to help regulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, as demonstrated by lower cortisol peaks throughout the day, with subsequent downstream impacts, including lower blood pressure, resting heart rate, and other metabolic markers such as fasting glucose and cholesterol. Moreover, a recent systemic review of clinical and non-clinical studies found that multiple mind-body interventions, including mindfulness and other meditation techniques, relaxation response, breath regulation, stress management, and resilience training programs, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, are associated overall with gene expression changes that lead to down-regulation of inflammatory processes that are upregulated in response to chronic stress. Mind-body interventions may therefore mitigate the impacts of adversity on the brain-directed stress response. The importance of intervening early for child development. Nurturing care and interventions to promote early childhood development yield lifelong benefits. They are designed to protect against or compensate for adversities that are known to affect healthy brain development in children. Biological and psychosocial evidence supports the notion of intervening as early as possible to protect and promote child development. For instance, interventions such as the high-scope preschool study, which offered preschool and parental support through home visits for at-risk children, have demonstrated incredibly positive long-term results, including higher educational performance and future earnings, lower rates of teenage pregnancy, as well as fewer crime, arrest, and prison time in adulthood. Although the cost-benefit ratios between different studies cannot be compared due to different estimation methods, robust evidence overall suggests a positive return to society with early interventions. The high-scope preschool study, for instance, reported a return on investment over the course of 40 years, reaching close to $13 for every dollar invested. Though the case for investment is strongest for early childhood interventions, supporting programs that intervene beyond the age of 3 also translate into positive return and are crucial to ensuring continuity of these efforts made in early life and for promoting positive development throughout childhood and adolescence. What are the interventions that we need to do in specific sector? For physical health, in the health and social care sector, we need to increase access to perinatal, child, and adolescent health care, including neurodevelopmental assessments. We need to improve access and appropriate use of essential medicines and diagnostics. We need to implement infectious disease management, eradication, control, and immunization program. We need to run targeted prevention efforts to address obesity, hypertension, high cholesterol, and diabetes. We need to improve post-accident emergency care and long-term rehabilitation. We need to promote tobacco cessation and reduction in harmful alcohol use, as well as physical activity in healthy diets. In terms of education, for physical health, we need to include growth monitoring and neurodevelopmental assessments in school health programs. We need to design school curricula to teach children and adolescents about brain health promotion in an age-appropriate way. We need to implement healthy food and programs in schools. We need to include quality physical activity programs in schools. We require helmet use for contact sports within schools to reduce the incidence of head injuries. For legislation and governance for physical health, we need to strengthen social and financial protection schemes under universal health care, such as a general health insurance for primary care. We need to strengthen breastfeeding and national food and nutrition policies and action plans. We need to implement the WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. We need to implement and strengthen legislation pertaining to helmet and seatbelt use, as well as drink driving. In terms of finance and economy, we need to dedicate a portion of the health budget to promoting brain health. We need to dedicate funds for food and physical activity programs. We need to introduce tobacco, alcohol, and sugar taxation schemes. For employment, more physical activity, healthy behaviors in workplace, such as smoke-free workplaces. In terms of infrastructure, urban planning, and housing, we need to implement safety measures for roads and vehicles, safety of home and environments to reduce the risk of falls and traumatic brain injury, especially for old adults. We need to design cities to promote access to outdoor spaces for safe physical activity. We need to encourage urban planning and infrastructure development that improves access to outdoor spaces for safe physical activity and alternatives to a sedentary lifestyle. In terms of ecology, nature, and climate, we need to strengthen vector control for infectious disease, for example, Zika virus, malaria, Taenia solium. We need to coordinate closely for the implementation of water, sanitation, and hygiene actions to increase access to safe and clean drinking water. This was all about physical health. Next, please. For healthy environments in health and social care sector, we need to train health workers to recognize risks to brain health, science, and management of environmental toxicants. We need to implement testing of lead poisoning for infants and children. In partnership with humanitarian actors, we need to strengthen emergency preparedness plans for natural and man-made disasters to ensure access to services for people with pre-existing or emergency-induced central nervous system disorders such as traumatic injuries. In the area of education for healthy environments, we need to design school curricula to teach children and adolescents in an age-appropriate way about environmental impacts of brain health. In terms of legislation and governance for healthy environments, we need to strengthen regulatory and legal measures to accelerate the global phase-out of lead paint. We need to strengthen legislation prohibiting pesticides and other chemicals known to be harmful to human health and development. We need to strengthen legislation to reduce the use of fossil fuels, provide incentives for the use of cleaner energy alternatives and cleaner cooking stoves. We need to enact environmental protection laws to ensure clean air, ambient and household, and water. In terms of health and social care sector, for safety and security, we need to train health and social care workers to recognize signs of violence, abuse, maltreatment, and neglect, especially of children, adolescents, and older adults, and establish appropriate protective mechanisms. We need to streamline protection of brain health and neurological care within response plans for humanitarian crisis. For education and safety and security, we need to train education workers to identify cases of abuse, maltreatment, and neglect in children and adolescents. In terms of legislation and governance, we need to implement policies and programs to prevent abuse, maltreatment, neglect of children, adolescents, and older adults. We need to protect survivors of violence, including domestic, intimate, and partner violence, and reduce violence at community level. We also need to introduce social and financial protection schemes to increase financial security, prevent catastrophic health spending, and prevent poverty. For finance and economy, we need to dedicate a portion of health budget to identifying and managing environmental risks to health. We need to dedicate funding for monitoring and of environmental health related legislation. In terms of employment, we need to invest in civil engineers, scientists, educational and health workers. We need to protect workers against and limit exposure to pesticides, heavy metals such as mercury, industrial solvents, and other high priority chemicals known to be neurotoxic. In terms of infrastructure, urban planning and housing, we need to design new buildings to promote cleaner household and indoor air. We need to design cities to improve walkability, and use of public transport versus personal vehicles. In terms of ecology, nature, and climate, we need to protect the population against and limit exposure to pesticides, heavy metals such as mercury, industrial solvents and other high priority chemicals known to be neurotoxic. We also need to monitor air and water quality with routine testing, make results publicly available, and implement measures to improve air and water quality. We need to strengthen national capacity to prepare for, respond to, and recover after natural disasters, chemical spills, and radiological and nuclear emergencies. Finance and economy, we need to dedicate funding for housing protection programs as well as social and financial protection. For employment, we need to abide by fair labor and minimum wages acts and legislation. For infrastructure, urban planning, and housing, we need to design communities and neighborhoods to enhance physical safety. For example, adequate lighting, frequent transportation stops. For ecology, nature, and climate, we need to provide sufficient safeguard for safety and security. For learning and social connection in health and social care sector, we need to implement intervention for response caregiving and early learning. We need to train health and social care workers to identify loneliness and social isolation across the life course. In the education sector, we need to increase access to early childhood learning programs. We need to increase access to formal education and inclusive education. We need to implement interventions to promote adolescent brain health and development. We need to design school curricula to teach children and adolescents how to combat stigma, prejudice, and discrimination in an age-appropriate way. In terms of legislature and governance, we need to implement laws and legislation that mandate school attendance for primary and secondary school age children and prohibit child labor and aim to protect the rights of and reduce stigma, prejudice, and discrimination against vulnerable population, people with central nervous system conditions, and their carers. For learning and social action, we need to have finance and economy actions, eliminate school fees. We need to introduce payment schemes for childcare and early childhood education program. For employment, we need to strengthen adequate monitoring to ensure that children are not used for labor. We need to promote lifelong learning in the workplace. We need to design cities, towns, and communities to ensure easy access to school for children and adolescents, as well as access to workplaces, social and leisure activities for adults. Next slide. Access to quality services. In health and social care sector, we need to develop evidence-based coordinated health and social care services and integrate central nervous system disorders into existing relevant health services at all three levels, ensuring continuity of care across levels and disciplines. We need to establish, strengthen, and train skilled interdisciplinary health and social care teams to diagnose, treat, and manage central nervous system disorders and identify and treat care stress. We need to expand the role of specialists to train and supervise generalists. We need to improve availability and appropriate use of essential medicines and diagnostics for central nervous system disorders, including workforce training and their use. We need to provide accessible and evidence-based information on available resources for carers in the community. We need to develop mechanisms to involve people with neurological disorders and their carers in care planning. In the education sector, for access to quality services, we need to include growth monitoring and neurodevelopmental assessments in school health programs for early diagnosis and intervention. We need to provide robust primary, secondary, and university level education for the future health and social care workforce, including continuing education. In the field of legislation and governance, we need to implement social and financial protection schemes for people with central nervous system disorders and their carers. For example, general health insurance, disability pension, tax benefits, or flexible working hours. We need to establish transparent regulatory frameworks for health products and diagnostics. We need to develop mechanisms to involve people with central nervous system disorders and their carers in policy making and legal review. In terms of finance and economy, we need to dedicate a portion of the health budget to the management and prevention of CNS disorders, including access to essential medicines. We need to also implement social and financial benefits, financial protection for carers. In terms of employment, we need to address projected health workforce needs in the future. We need to establish compensation and incentives for workforce trained in CNS disorders to work in underserved areas. We need to implement employment protection schemes for carers, for example, leave or flexible working hours. In terms of infrastructure, urban planning and housing, we need to ensure availability of public transportation to access health facilities within the community. So after an important document of relating to optimization of brain health, we take now a relook at the recently held two-day National Labour Conference of Labour Ministers and Labour Secretaries of States and Union Territories, which was held from 25th to 26th of August at Tirupati in Andhra Pradesh. The Ministry of Labour and Employment will come out with the roadmaps on themes discussed in the conference to take vision forward in the Amrit Kaal. The first thematic session, for example, namely integrating e-Shram portal for onboarding social security schemes run by central government and state governments to universalize social protection to workers and to improve employment opportunities for all, was deliberated upon. Over 28 crore unorganized workers from over 400 occupations have already been registered on the e-Shram portal. Standard operating procedure is being prepared, for which a committee under Ministry of Labour and Employment has been constituted, along with members from states as well. Based on the standard operating procedure finalized by the committee, e-Shram data will be shared with states and states will return verified data. This will help states in making policy-driven decisions and implementation of welfare schemes. States expressed their views and gave suggestions on the theme. The second thematic discussed was Swasthya Se Samriddhi, for improving medical care and services through ESI hospitals run by state governments and integration with PMJY. Union Labour and Employment Minister mentioned that ESIC is committed to extend medical facilities to all districts by December 2022. Undertaken construction of 76 new hospitals, ready to recruit specialists for state-run ESI hospitals. States stated inter alia that ESIC is a standing example of cooperative federalism, where states and central institutions work together for providing health care services to the laborers. States welcomed the revision in norms for setting up hospitals. States were requested to complete the formation of societies at the earliest for easy decision-making, inputs for revision of norms for setting up new hospitals, and modalities for setting up of medical college and hospital in aspirational districts. The third thematic session was on framing of rules under the 4 labor codes and modalities for implementation, along with the development of portals for licensing, registration, returns, inspections, etc. The last theme, Vision Shramay Jayate at 2047, focused on just and equitable future of work, social protection to gig and platform workers, gender equality at work, and better opportunities to women. Issues on these themes were ease of doing business and ease of living for workers, discrimination of offense under codes, development of integrated portal under for registration, one-time license, compliance and returns, challenges in ensuring social security to gig and platform workers, and ways to address these, improving female labor force participation, skilling, lifelong learning aligned with future of work, skill gig gap mapping and facilitation of planned migration, sustainable financing of social security schemes. States would give important suggestions and status of rules making. So this Labour Ministers Conference, which was held after 6 years, is an important milestone in actually ensuring that all the labor codes, the 4 labor codes, gets implemented faster. Now we turn our attention to an important study which has been published only 2 days back. And this has been published in Nature Sustainability Journal. The message is, give me red. Clean air cuts anemia risk. Long-term exposure to air pollution due to high PM 2.5 increases the risk of anemia in women of reproductive age. A joint research by IIT Delhi, St. John's Medical College, Bangalore, and other institutes has established. According to the researchers, until now it was the general perception that malnutrition was a major cause of anemia. As a result, India's program was focused on increasing the iron intake among the vulnerable. India has one of the highest global prevalence, that is over 53% of anemia among women of reproductive age, 15 to 49 years, from regular iron deficiency due to menstruation, diet, or other factors like genetic disorders, parasitic infections, and inflammation from infections and other chronic diseases. The research titled Reducing the Burden of Anemia in Indian Women of Reproductive Age with Clean Air Targets, published in the journal Nature Sustainability, stated that while currently the solution to anemia was being explored in iron deficiency, the solution may also lie in cleaner air. The study mapped the entire country, including Delhi, and found that as concentration of PM 2.5 increases by 10 micrograms per cubic meter, the risk of anemia increases by over 7.2% among women. Researchers attributed this finding to high inflammation caused due to air pollution, which further reduces the body's absorption capacity of iron. They pointed out that merely increasing iron intake may not reduce iron deficiency, as the ingested iron may not be absorbed due to inflammation caused by long-term PM 2.5 exposure. Professor Sagnik Dey from Center of Excellence for Research on Clean Air, IIT Delhi, one of the lead authors of the study, pointed out that the Union Health Ministry's mission, Anemia Mukt Bharat, which seeks to reduce anemia prevalence from the current 53% to 35%, could be easily achieved if 2 other schemes, National Clean Air Program, that is NCAP, and Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, that is PMUY, met their target. The other lead researchers included Ekta Chaudhary from IIT Delhi and Dr. Santu Ghosh from St. John's Medical College, Bangalore. Dr. Dey pointed out that since there were different sources of PM 2.5, like biomass burning, fossil fuels, industrial and domestic emissions, etc., the impact of emissions also varied. The emission from industries, especially the unauthorized sector, had the largest impact. National Clean Air Program aims to reduce PM 2.5 by 30% by 2025, while PMUY, Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, is aimed at reducing household emissions through LPG for cooking. If both these schemes are successfully implemented, then anemia prevalence will come down to 39%, which is very close to the target, said Dr. Sagnik Dey. This is the article published on 25th August 2022 in the journal Nature Sustainability. The title is Reducing Burden of Anemia in Indian Women of Reproductive Age with Clean Air Targets. And you can see the authors are from India, Kerry Research Institute, IIT Delhi, St. John's Medical College, and also researchers from US, China, and UK. This is the abstract. India has one of the highest, that is 53% global prevalence of anemia among women of reproductive age, WRA 15 to 49 years. Long-term exposure to ambient fine particulate matter, PM2.5, type of air pollution may increase the prevalence of anemia through systemic inflammation. Using a linear mixed model adjusted for potential confounding factors, we show that for every 10 microgram per cubic meter increase in ambient PM2.5 exposure, the average anemia prevalence among Indian married women increases by 7.23%, 95% uncertainty interval of 6.82 to 7.63. Among PM2.5 species, sulfate and black carbon are more associated with anemia than organics and dust. Among sectoral contributors, industry was the greatest, followed by the unorganized domestic, power, road, dust, agricultural waste, burning, and transport sectors. If India meets its recent clean air targets, such anemia prevalence among women of reproductive age will fall from 53% to 39.5%, taking 186 districts below the national target of 35%. Our results suggest that the transition to clean energy would accelerate India's progress towards the anemia-free mission targets. This is an important observation linking our physical health with environment, how we need to take action on the energy front and the clean air targets. Another important study which is published in the Lancet this month is regarding almost half of global cancer deaths are due to risk factors, with smoking, alcohol use, and high BMI being the greatest contributors. It has been published by Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation, which is a global think tank on health metrics. This study illustrates that the burden of cancer remains an important public health challenge that is growing in magnitude around the world. Smoking continues to be the leading risk factor for cancer globally, and other substantial contributors to cancer burden vary. Dr. Chris Murray, professor and director of IHME in US, this is what he said. These are the main observation. Analysis of the impact of 34 risk factors on deaths and ill health from 23 cancer types suggests they accounted for 4.45 million cancer deaths globally in 2019. That is 44.4% of all cancer deaths for both sexes combined. The smoking, alcohol use, and high body mass index, that is BMI, the leading causes. Half of all male cancer deaths in 2019, that is 50.6%, which is 2.88 million, were due to estimated risk factors, compared with over 1/3 of all female cancer deaths in 36.3%, which is 1.58 million. Males had more years lost to death and disability due to environmental and occupational risks and behavioral risks compared to females. Global cancer deaths due to risk factors increased by an estimated 20.4% from 2010 to 2019 and differed considerably based on countries' level of development. Authors call for investment in risk reduction strategies while strengthening health systems for early diagnosis and effective treatment. Could we go for next slide, please? Yes. The global burden of cancer attributable to risk factors 2010-19, a systemic analysis for the global burden of disease study 2019. Abstract is understanding the magnitude of cancer burden attributable to potentially modifiable risk factors is crucial for development of effective prevention and mitigation strategies. We analyzed results from the global burden of disease, injuries, and risk factor study, that is GBD 2019, to inform cancer control planning efforts globally. The methods are: the GBD 2019 comparative risk assessment framework was used to estimate cancer burden attributable to behavioral, environmental, and occupational and metabolic risk factors. A total of 82 risk outcome pairs were included on the basis of World Cancer Research Fund criteria. Estimated cancer deaths and disability-adjusted life years, that is DALYs, in 2019, and change in these measures between 2010 and 2019 are presented. Findings are: globally in 2019, the risk factors included in the analysis for 4.45 million, which is 95% uncertainty interval 4.01 to 4.94 deaths, and 105 million, that is 95.0 to 116 dialyses for both sexes combined, representing 44.4% with a range of 41.3 to 48.4 of all cancer deaths, and 42.0% range of 39.1 to 45.6 of all dialyses. There were 2.88 million risk attributable cancer deaths in males of all male cancer deaths, and 1.58 million risk attributable cancer deaths in females of all female cancer deaths. The leading risk factors at the most detailed level globally for risk attributable cancer deaths and dialysis in 2019 for both sexes combined was smoking, followed by alcohol use and high BMI. The risk attributable cancer burden varied by world region and socio-demographic index, with smoking, unsafe sex, and alcohol use being the three leading risk factors for risk attributable cancer dialysis in low SDI location in 2019, whereas dialysis in high SDI location mirrored the top three global risk factor rankings. From 2010 to 2019, global risk attributable cancer deaths increased by 20.4% and dialysis by 16.8%, with the greatest percentage increase in metabolic risks, that is 34.7% and 33.33%. The interpretation is the leading risk factors contributed to global cancer burden in 2019 were behavioral, whereas metabolic risk factors saw the largest increases between 2010 and 2019. Reducing exposure to these modifiable risk factors would decrease cancer mortality and dialysis rates worldwide, and policies should be tailored appropriately to local cancer risk factor burden. The study was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I've given the citation published on 18th of August in the journal Lancet. Now, I'll share important conferences, webinars, and seminars that are going to be held in the near future. First and foremost, a Medichem Virtual Congress, Sankofa Sustainability. The need to reflect on the past to build a successful future will be there. It's a virtual event on 1st and 2nd September. Topics like sustainability, continuity operations in the chemical sector, controversy in best practice navigating crisis communication in the COVID-19 era, getting to sustainability in the chemical sector, genotoxicity, environmental pollution and prenatal development, occupational health risk assessment and risk factors related to health and industrial hygiene, monitoring data on chemicals exposure of industrial workers, EDT or OSH capacity building using e-learning and micro-learning in underserved areas of the globe, minimum exposure lessons from the pharma. So Medichem, after a long time, will be organizing a virtual event of 2 days. This is the program on the first day, where you find a wide range of topics like keynote on sustainability and continuity operations in the chemical sector by Dr. Carlos Zanarchi, Professor of Global Health and Environmental Occupational Health, Director of Global Healthy Policy Program, the George Washington University, and then controversy in best practice navigating crisis communication in the COVID-19 era by Dr. Max Loom, and getting to sustainability in the chemical sector by Dr. T. Guidotti, and genotoxicity, environmental pollution and prenatal development, Dr. Elpida Nikoski, forum on getting sustainability, and would be there on first day. On second day, next slide, please. We have second keynote on occupational health risk assessment and risk factors related to health and industrial hygiene, monitoring data on chemicals exposure of industrial workers. Then we have EDT and OSH capacity building. Then we have minimum exposure lessons for pharma and ICO Scientific Committee and ICO Scientific Chair. So in this second day, at the last session, we'll have Dr. Rajesh also speaking. Next slide, please. Another webinar will be on 8th of September through the WHO NCD Alliance, which will be held at 7 p.m. onwards. It is hosted by NCD Alliance, WHO, and the World Diabetes Federation, and it will be related to Invest to Protect, NCDs as an investment priority to boost society's resilience and recovery. It will be held on Zoom platform. Then we have 16th Joint Annual Scientific Health Conference, and we have now an important scientific conference of where third Minosh International Conference will be held from September 21 to 23 in Kampala, All the sub-themes are shown here. And of course, last date for that submission of abstract is over. It will be held in Kampala, Uganda. On 24th October, an online webinar will be held on understanding the transition from work to retirement. ICO Scientific Committee on Aging and Work, in collaboration with OmegaNet Cost Action, will be held on 24th October. I've given the contact information, kareen.proper@ribm.nl. Kindly email if you want to attend. Then, next slide, please. OcuCon 2023, New Delhi, 18 to 21st January 2023. Workplace Health, Wellbeing and Environmental Sustainability for Future Ready Organization will be held in New Delhi, Constitution Club of India. These are the sub-themes for the conference. A very wide range of sub-themes are there. Abstracts are open at the moment for online submission, and last date to submit the abstract is 30th of September. Conference registration is presently on from 1st July to 31st August. These are the rates for registration for different categories of members of or delegates. Kindly do register online and make payment online. These are the key highlights of OcuCon 2023. For further details, please contact this conference secretariat, which I mentioned in the slides. The email ID and mobile numbers are given in the slide. Then another event which would be held in Mumbai in March 2023, from 15 to 17 March 2023, EPICO 2023. I've given the program highlights and theme and topics in this slide. Registration details are mentioned in the slide for different categories of delegates. Pre-conference workshop, banquet fees, and accompanying person fees are also mentioned in the slide. From 28 April to 3rd May 2024 in Marrakesh, Morocco, on-site congress, which will be held, would be ICO 2024, Enhancing Occupational Research and Practices, Closing the Gaps, organized by ICO, Moroccan Occupational Health Association, Faculty of Medicine and Pharmacy of Casablanca, Hassan Al University of Casablanca. Website shall be coming soon. With this, we come to the end of this episode, that is episode 21 of OcuHealthscapes. We shall see you again next month on last Saturday, September 24, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. onwards. So do attend and share with your friends. The proceedings of this OcuHealthscapes episode shall be available on the our YouTube channel, which will be Enoch DigiConnect YouTube channel. Do connect with the Enoch DigiConnect YouTube channel, and you can revise what you may have missed in this episode. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Rajiv, for a very comprehensive understanding of proceedings all across. I think this is really an exhaustive summary, and for anyone who has missed reading out on the recent happenings, you can't find a better capsule in a couple of hours. So I think it has covered a wide range of activities, from how adenoviruses are changing. I especially like the brain health discourse, because that's something which is really important, but many of us might not have seen it in the same way as how Dr. Rajiv explained us. Also hearing about the different academic sessions which might be happening as a result of conferences or meetings. Well, that's a wonderful opportunity. Goes without saying, there's a lot of scientific feast which is coming up in the future. And we are all looking forward to have you in the OcuCon 2023 at Delhi. I really appreciate your participation today. I'm just looking at questions and answers. If there are something. Well, Dr. Rajiv, there are two questions. Would you like to take them, or shall I narrate them? there's the first question from Dr. Lele, which is about why role of diet and water intake have not been thought. I think you have already taken this. What was the operation? Okay, I think these are related to Dr. Mashelkar's session. Yeah, we have already taken this. So no new questions. Guys, it's an opportunity in case you have any questions to Dr. Rajiv now. Well, this is the best time. Well, if there are no questions, I think let me also see with the participants if you have any feedback. Dr. Tyagaraja, would you have any feedback for the session today?
I think he has to unmute before speaking. Dr. Tyagaraja, you have to unmute yourself.
I think he's still muted and unable to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, Sir Dr. Rajiv Jain ji, and good evening, Dr. Ashish Vijay Jain, very wonderful moderator. And today we heard a very good lecture from Vishwaraj as well as our daughter, Dr. Rajiv Kumar Jain. And here and there, I missed because of some patients. And sir, I request you to put it in as early as possible, this video, so that let me go through and come out with certain whatever wanted to summarize some of this one for the people who have not seen this. And it's a very wonderful here and there, whatever I have seen is really a wonderful message. As Dr. Ashish Vijay Jain says, that within a couple of hours, we learned a lot from you, sir. I think let God give you the good health so that we can hear every month one of the best lectures. It is mostly an international lecture we can hear. And thank you very much, sir, for briefing about ICO, briefing about Epicon, briefing about IOCON, OcuCon. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tyagaraja. And let me also see if we have Dr. Dulera. Dr. Dulera, would you have any comments? Seems like Dr. Dulera's mic is not active. So, all right. So in case there are any thoughts and comments, we would have it now. Else, I would wish everyone a very happy weekend. And once again, thanking both the speakers for an excellent deliberation on their topics. Thank you so much. And we are looking to have you back next month on a similar session. Thank you, everybody. Please take care.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish, for wonderful moderation.
Thanks. Bye-bye.